I run the school district. But that's not all I run. I run every day. I run to relax. I run to feel normal. I run to think, and I run to learn. I don't mean that running stimulates key portions of the brain, improving cognition and memory, even though it does do that. I mean that to me, running is a teacher, a blend of Mr. Miyagi, Yoda, Charles Darwin, and Confucius. And I believe that running yields crucial lessons for parents, educators, even whole school systems. Here are 5 of those lessons. Lesson number 1, one of the most powerful and profound forces of nature is incrementalism. I didn't run in high school or college. I'm 5'6" on a good day. After hanging from monkey bars and stretching. And one of my legs is shorter than the other. But I've managed to run half a dozen ultramarathons in the past year, including a recent 32-miler around the perimeter of Manhattan. Running illuminates the power of incrementalism. You see, the thing about running is that if you do this much today, even if it's only walking, and do that same amount tomorrow, the same amount the next day, and on day 4 or 5, increase by just a sliver, and repeat that cycle over and over again, you will become more and more capable. That seems so obvious, right? But you'd be surprised at how many people ask me about running a 5K or a half marathon, or even a distance much longer than that, without realizing or believing that they themselves are capable of doing it. They are, if they subscribe to incrementalism. Anyone can commit to 100 days of bipedal motion, walking or running. And anyone who does that will be stunned at how much more they can do on day 100 versus day 1. 100 days go by like that. Get through the first 100, the next 100 go by like that. And for all of you who have heard someone say in the past week, I can't believe another school year is ending, a year goes by like that. Adhering to incrementalism results in extraordinary gains. Of course, that's not just true about running. It's true about learning. I don't care if you are learning how to play a musical instrument, trying to become more proficient at mathematics, learning another language, or reading. It's all about incrementalism. And the great language theorist Stephen Krashen expresses this notion with a beautiful and simple equation. I plus 1. Input plus 1. Provide a learner with input. Repeat that input plus a little bit more, and do that cyclically, and the learner gradually becomes more skilled and more capable. Krashen tells us something critically important. It must be I plus 1. I plus 2 doesn't work. I plus 3 is even worse. Provide the body with too much input too soon, and the body breaks down. Provide a student with too much input too soon, and the student shuts down, suffocated by anxiety and a lack of confidence. As educators, we must remember that it is always I plus 1. Trying to do too much too fast leads to problems. It's incrementalism, not exponentialism, that is the cardinal law. Which leads me to my second lesson. The death knell of incrementalism is a time limit. The imposition of time on progress kills progress. If those same folks were to ask me how to go about running their first 5K or half marathon or some other race, I would never tell them, pick a race 3 months out or 6 or a year from now, sign up and go after it. I would instead tell them to focus on their own incremental progress. You see, running is a foundational evolutionary function. We were born to do it, as McDougall tells us. So could you imagine if we took all human beings and grouped them together in chronological age bands and told them, we expect you to run either a certain distance or at a certain pace at key points in your life, 7 years old, 10 years old, 14, whatever, then assessed them on how well they did that, and told them that they were either good runners or bad runners or something in between based on how well they performed. That's nuts, but that's what we do in schools. We group all of our kids in chronological age bands, otherwise known as grade levels. We impose standards upon them that have been imposed upon us by our state legislatures. We expect them to all acquire those standards at roughly the same time, and we assess them at exactly the same time to see if they've done what we've asked. This is backwards, in my view. But I recognize that a school district can only push so hard against that mindset and structure. But what we can do as parents and educators is recenter our students on their progress. We can remind them how far they've come and how much ground they've made, as opposed to try to focus them on some time limit that was set for them by some people who don't even know them. I've got news for you. The kid who becomes bilingual is not the one who learns the vocabulary list fastest in 7th grade. It's the kid who takes a genuine and enduring interest and motivation in language learning and allows her interest to unfold over time through her schooling and beyond schooling. Removing the time limit allows progress to continue without end. Lesson number 3, misery and hopelessness are always temporary. I've run some long races. I've found myself in the middle of the woods, on trails going straight uphill, over rocks and through mud, and I felt dizzy and nauseous and dehydrated and alone and like I was going to die. In fact, there have been times where I felt like I wanted to die. But the hill always comes to an end, and the body stabilizes, and you find yourself able to inch forward bit by bit, closer to the finish line. Running long teaches you that it's not all highs and personal records. Lows are part of the process. Why would this matter to a school district? Well, we're in a very high-achieving place with phenomenal students, as you've seen tonight. But we've also seen growing rates of depression and anxiety and even suicide ideation. In fact, more than 95% of our students every year who graduate go on and go to college, and suicide right now is the second leading cause of death on college campuses. We need to do more to let our students know that going to school from kindergarten through 12th grade is much harder than any long-distance race you can find. I would bet if I asked every adult in this audience right now, what would you prefer? Signing up for a marathon, even though you've never run before, or returning to 6th grade and repeating 3 years of middle school, and then another 4 of high school after that? Very few of you would choose the latter. We need to empathize with our students and help them understand that the K-12 experience is grueling and that there are lows. And some of the lows are unavoidable. Some might even be necessary. And the lows may even make the highs feel better. I always make it a point to go for a run when it's 38 degrees and raining, because it makes the 70-degree sunshine taste so much sweeter. Lesson number 4, listen to the body. Here we are in Chatham, New Jersey, located about 25 miles due west of Lower Manhattan. Human beings have lived here for roughly 11,000 years. And for 10,500 of those years, there was no way to get from this red dot to anywhere over there without using our legs and our feet. There were no cars, no trains, no bicycles. There weren't even any horses here until 500 years ago. If you wanted to eat or find water or communicate with another person, you needed to engage in bipedal motion all of the time. It's probably why 25% of the bones in the human body are found in the feet. Runners have an intuitive sense of their bodies. They understand their hydration levels. They know what to eat and not eat if they're not feeling well. And above all, they know that pain is good. Pain leads to adaptation, and the adaptation is what makes us stronger. But pain has a requisite dance partner: rest. Remove rest from the formula, and the formula collapses. I believe that the single worst sin we commit in public education is to ignore the rest needs of our students. It is a physiological fact that adolescent human beings have different circadian rhythms than child human beings and adult human beings. They are programmed to fall asleep later in the day and wake up later in the morning. But we start our day here at the high school at 7:40 a.m. We shouldn't do that. And a multitude of studies from all across the United States in different types of school districts demonstrate that when schools push back their start times to 8:30 or later, for example, students don't just simply go to bed later and wake up a little bit later. They go to bed about the same time, and they get more sleep. And more sleep translates into lower rates of depression, lower rates of anxiety, fewer mental health issues, fewer car accidents, and better academic performance. Long-distance runners learn early on that their mental makeup is really important for performance, but that they can't fool their bodies for very long. We should stop fooling ourselves that our kids don't need the rest that nature dictates. Lesson number 5, running teaches gratitude. This is my 18th year in Chatham. My first full week of employment here, the 9/11 terrorist attacks took place. I happened to be training for my first marathon at the time, the New York City Marathon. I planned to run a marathon once and cross it off the bucket list. But instead, I found a sense of connection to other human beings that I never want to relinquish. I saw police officers and firefighters on that day saluting me and the other runners and calling us heroes for running in their city on that day. I ran behind runners with makeshift RIP memorials on their backs for family members who had been killed 8 weeks earlier. I heard more shouts of encouragement in more languages than I would have heard if I was at the UN on a Tuesday morning. And I picked up a habit on November 4th, 2001, that I've maintained in every single race I've run since then. If I come upon a blind runner being led by a guide, or an athlete in a wheelchair, or a runner with some other physical impediment that I'm fortunate enough not to have to deal with, I always give them a shout out. But to be honest, the shout out is often a whimper, because I get choked up with inspiration and admiration for what they're doing. And so it was 5 years ago when I was fortunate enough to run the Boston Marathon in the first year after the attacks in that city. And if in New York in 2001, there was a sense of unity, in Boston in 2014, there was a spirit of defiance, a middle finger in the face of any person who thought they could desecrate that city's signature event. And on that day, from Hopkinton to downtown Boston, I saw other sights that have tattooed me forever. I ran by the legendary Dick Hoyt, 75 years old at the time, pushing his quadriplegic son through their 32nd Boston Marathon. I came by athletes sporting prosthetic devices to replace the limbs they had lost 12 months before. I even ran by my wife and our twin sons, 8 years old at the time, the exact same age as a little boy named Martin Richard, who was waiting for his father at the finish line when he was killed by the bombs. And I can tell you that I felt a sense of connection and gratitude to other people that turned my typical whimper into a weep. because all I could do was cry and keep moving. What does gratitude have to do with public education? It's been my experience that some educators and parents spend too much time dwelling on the deficiencies and weaknesses in kids and not enough time identifying, appreciating, and building out their strengths. I would bet that if you surveyed highly successful people, CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, professional athletes, you'd find that they certainly spent time working on their weaknesses to try to get better at what they do, but that they spent even more time recognizing their own strengths and inner capabilities and building them out to gain a competitive advantage over others. Not every CEO or professional athlete is good at everything. We shouldn't expect our kids to crush every subject. I believe that we should spend more time with our students focusing on their natural affinities and strengths, and a little less time focusing on what they cannot do yet. I'll leave you with a footnote. Running teaches humility. You find your limits. So I know that I'm not always right. Sometimes I come up short, even after dangling from monkey bars. Please test out these lessons. Those of you who are parents probably didn't show up for kindergarten on the first day with your child and say, "My daughter doesn't know how to do addition and subtraction yet, therefore she will never do any math." Conversely, you knew that gradually your child would come to possess and develop more and more capabilities and skills over time, at least in part as a result of the lessons I just shared. So please reverse the lessons and try them on yourself. Are you a runner yet? Every one of you is capable of forward motion. Your body is plastic. And I don't mean that in the modern sense. I mean it in the original Greek, plastine, to mold. Your body is moldable. It's up to you to choose how to mold it. I invite you to take your next steps forward. Thank you.